Okay, let's get right into it. The whole conversation around self-driving cars, well, it's changing. And it's all because of this tiny, almost hidden detail on a government website. So what is really going on with Tesla's Robotaxi plans? Let's break it all down.
So here's the thing. Over on the official Texas DMV website for Austin, right next to the big names like Waymo, Tesla's self-driving service now has one little word next to it: deployed. Now you might just think, okay, a clerical update, who cares? But this is a huge signal. It means Tesla itself has filed the paperwork saying, hey, we're ready for a real, live ride-hailing service here.
And that's why we're calling this a deployed milestone, because this isn't really about the status change itself. Think of it more like the tip of an iceberg. It's hinting at this massive, coordinated strategy that's been quietly playing out behind the scenes for months.
Which of course brings us to the big question. Is this all just about Austin? Or is this one little clue that points to something much, much bigger? Well, all the evidence suggests that what we're seeing in Texas is just one piece of a giant nationwide puzzle.
This brings us to the core idea here, the nationwide seeding strategy. You see, instead of launching in one city and then slowly, painfully expanding, the theory is that Tesla is prepping a whole bunch of cities all at once, getting them all ready to go live in parallel the moment the technology is finally ready. They're not just planting one tree. They're trying to plant an entire forest at the same time.
And look, this isn't just some wild speculation. We can actually see a clear, repeatable process unfolding. It starts with applying for permits, then getting them. Then they start hiring vehicle operators and getting that final regulatory green light. The very last step is often doing what's called LiDAR validation tests. That's just using lasers to build a super detailed 3D map to confirm the car can see absolutely everything. This whole pipeline is active in cities all across the country.
And this is where the strategy becomes pretty undeniable. Just look at this chart. It's the proof in the pudding. You can see different cities at different stages of this exact process. Phoenix? They've already got their final regulatory approval. Dallas and even Boston are in those final LiDAR validation stages. And of course, Austin now has that shiny deployed status. This is not a random series of events, folks. This is a coordinated, nationwide push and act.
So the crucial point here is the scale. We're talking about more than 20 major metropolitan areas across at least 9 states, all being prepped at the same time. This changes everything. It means the groundwork for a massive nationwide network is already being laid right under our noses.
Now, with all this preparation, you'd think a launch is right around the corner. But this is where we get to the real bottleneck. It's not about permits or paperwork anymore. It's about flipping the technology switch.
And this perfectly illustrates the huge divide in expectations. You've got a really conservative Wall Street forecast, like from Morgan Stanley, saying maybe 1,000 robotaxis by the end of 2026. But this seeding strategy opens the door to a much wilder scenario, maybe 40,000 robotaxis in that same time frame. That's a 40 times difference. How is that even possible?
Well, it all comes down to this one powerful idea of the switch. This is that magic moment when the full self-driving software is finally deemed ready for a wide-scale driverless rollout. The idea is that once that switch is flipped, all the regulatory and operational groundwork is already done. All the pieces are already on the board, just waiting for the game to start.
So let's connect the dots. The math actually becomes pretty simple. You've got your seeding ground of 20-plus cities all prepped and ready to go. The technology switch gets flipped. Then, all you have to do is deploy, say, 2,000 cars in each of those cities almost overnight, and boom! Suddenly, 40,000 robotaxis on the road doesn't seem so far-fetched after all.
Okay, but this is where we have to make a really, really important distinction. A lot of people hear robotaxi and they immediately think their own car will be able to drive them anywhere, totally unsupervised. But are those two things actually the same problem?
So let's unpack this, because it's a crucial distinction. We're going to separate the idea of a robotaxi network from what we call true unsupervised self-driving for you and me. They might sound similar, but believe me, they represent two vastly different challenges and two very different futures for this technology.
First up, the Robotaxi. What is it? Think of it as a fleet of cars owned and run by a company. The key things are that they operate within a very specific mapped-out area, a geofence, and there's the possibility of remote human operators who can step in if a car gets into a tricky situation. It's a controlled environment.
Now, unsupervised full self-driving. That's a completely different beast. This is the dream, right? It's a feature in your privately owned car. The promise is that it can drive anywhere without you needing to supervise it and with no company person ready to intervene. The amount of responsibility and risk is just immense.
And when you put these two side by side, the difference in just how hard they are is, well, it's stark. A robotaxi network has all these safety nets built right in. You've got remote operators and a limited area. It's been described as being a magnitude easier to solve. Unsupervised FSD, on the other hand, it has none of that. It is, by all accounts, a whole magnitude harder.
And this visual really drives the point home. If you think of the technical and risk challenge as a hurdle you have to clear, the one for a controlled robotaxi fleet is pretty high. But the hurdle for true, go-anywhere unsupervised FSD, it is exponentially higher. This is exactly why the focus is shifting to the robotaxi as the more achievable and financially valuable goal in the near term.
So what should you really take away from all this? First, that deployed status in Austin isn't the story, it's just a signal. Second, the real story is this nationwide seeding of over 20 cities. Third, the final hurdle isn't regulation anymore, it's flipping that technology switch. And finally, it's so important to understand the distinction. The immediate, high-value prize is the robotaxi network, because it's a much more manageable problem to solve.
And that leaves us with one final, massive question to think about. If this whole seeding strategy pays off, and if that big switch does get flipped, what actually happens to our cities, our economy, and our daily lives when 20 major metropolitan areas turn on their robotaxi networks all at once?